Hello and welcome to another year of the Recharge. I'm Ruben Gonzalez, and that's Matthew Stanley, and we're back, Matthew. We're back here to bring Chargers news and Chargers updates and kind of recharge for the next game. So, hey, tell everybody hello.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you guys again. We're going to be back for this whole season. And yeah, it's good to be back giving you guys some rundown action.
Of course, you guys probably know us from Bolts from the Blue. And Matthew actually has a new podcast that's going to be shuffling out here in the next couple days or so. So keep a lookout for that. But as of now, we're here at the Recharge. And so let's talk about the upcoming season, Matthew. It's a new year. A lot of new surprises. What are you expecting this year? What kind of team are the Chargers going to be this year?
Well, on paper, the Chargers are a fantastic team. There's a lot of people giving the Chargers a lot of hype, a lot of people buying into that hype. And I think, that rolling into year 2 with Anthony Lynn is going to be great. The team seems to be carrying forward a really good attitude. And like I said, on paper, they have all the talent in the world. And I think unless they shoot themselves in the foot, they have the potential to do a lot of good things this year.
All right. Well, I'm always optimistic. I'm a homer. I'm supposed to be, right? I always expect the Chargers to do well. And of course, us Charger fans, we're kind of used to the letdown. And so something tells me, though, this year is going to be quite different. There's a lot of good things that are in place. And one of those things, as you look on the rundown, is our draft class this year. Pretty exciting players coming on the team. Got Duran, we got Kaiser. We've got a lot of people. We've even got one from last year going to make a contribution for the first time this year as he comes off an injury. We've got some really young, exciting players, Matt. Yeah,
the draft went really well this year. Obviously, for those of you that watched the draft show, once they made that Derwin pick, you saw us all get super excited. He's a game changer. He never should have fallen to 17. That was a huge gift for the Chargers. And we're really happy they did the right thing and they took Derwin there in the first. And then when they rolled into the second round, a lot of us on the draft show, we were really confused with the Uchenna Nwosu pick. We thought it was maybe a little too predictable, a little too easy for the Chargers, that they were just kind of going for a safe pick. But then as day 3 started and they grabbed Kaiser White, it really started to take shape what the Chargers were actually trying to do with the Nwosu pick on defense. And basically, they're just trying to get guys that are hyper athletic, guys that can go make tackles, guys that can produce in a bunch of different positions. Nwosu can rush from the edge. He can drop back and play linebacker. Kaiser White, obviously, he played safety in college, but they have him at linebacker for the Chargers. And so they grabbed a lot of versatile guys. They grabbed Justin Jones in the 3rd round to play defensive tackle. We haven't seen him yet, but hopefully he'll be ready for the game this week. He might be able to get a couple snaps in. And then in the 5th round, the Chargers took Scott Quessenberry, and he made the roster playing on the interior. He was mostly a center in college, but now they've got him playing guard. And he looks okay. Obviously, he's a 5th round pick. Not expecting him to come in and change the world, but he's got some skills, and it looks like they're going to keep him to develop. The 6th round pick, Dylan Cantrell, he was a wide receiver. Obviously, there was high expectations for him, but he got hurt in training camp. That never really materialized into anything because of he suffered a bone bruise in his knee, and those things just really drag on. So now he's on the practice squad where he can heal up and continue to work towards practicing. And then 7th round pick Justin Jackson, he obviously made the roster on the initial 53, and then he got dropped to make room for some of the one of the 2 waiver wire pickups they made, and now he's also on the practice squad. So it was a really exciting draft class. And then the Chargers also, they continued. This is now season 22 that they've had an undrafted free agent make the top 53. And they actually had 2. They had JJ Jones as a kick returner. Basically, he doesn't really bring much as a wide receiver, but we saw him bring back a punt for a touchdown in the preseason, so he earned his spot on the roster. And then they also had excuse me, sorry. They also had cornerback Brendan Faison make the team, and he looked great. He was, if you're a big fan of PFF and their grades, he was the 3rd highest graded rookie corner during the preseason. So a lot of exciting rookies this year. And like you mentioned, Forrest Lamp is coming back, and we can't wait to get him into the starting lineup.
One person, you mentioned him, Uchenna, man, he kind of surprised me this preseason. A lot of the hype went to Derwin and Kaiser, but on game night or game day, it was Uchenna making those sacks and just kind of bringing that electricity to the Chargers linebacking core. And I wouldn't be surprised if he can get us within the starting lineup the first few games. If he contends for Rookie of the Year for the defense, for all the rookies, that could be a possibility, especially if he continues to make strides and pressure the quarterback. He really could be a weapon.
Yeah, if he continues to produce and progress the way he did in the preseason, I could definitely see him competing for one of those rookie awards, because he was all over the field and making splash plays.
You mentioned some of those players that made the 53, and there was a lot of people this year. The NFL decided to wait to the final day of training camp to make the roster cuts to trim the roster down to the 53-man team. Was there anybody that surprised you that didn't make this team that probably should have? At least, without making the practice squad, but just anybody surprise you?
Yeah, so there wasn't really anybody that was that surprising of a cut. If you take out the people that then made the practice squad, obviously, defensive tackle Steven Richardson, he looked like the best run, the best defensive tackle against the run on the entire team, let alone the best rookie. So that to me was a really surprising cut and kind of disappointing, but they were able to lock him up on the practice squad, so that's really good that they got to keep him. And then same thing for rookie DeJuan Hines. He's a linebacker, and he looked fantastic both on defense and special teams. I mean, in that last game, he was all over the place. He forced a fumble. He had a tackle for a loss. He's just kind of all over the place, and he looks really good. I thought he offered better upside than Nick DeZubner. I thought he might force Nick DeZubner out, but obviously the team has, they just re-signed DeZubner. He led the team and actually the whole league in special teams tackles last year, so I can see the argument for keeping him. But like Richardson, Hines made the practice squad. Other than that, everybody else, the writing was kind of on the wall. Like, nobody really jumped up and stood up and, demanded a spot. And they didn't really have any veterans that were surprise cuts either. So yeah, no, this year there wasn't really any of those surprise cuts.
Speaking of cuts, one reason why you have that practice squad, you kind of develop the players. But the Chargers were hit with injuries pretty early on in training camp. They kind of curtailed it towards the end without the exception of Artavis Scott. But those injuries in the beginning of training camp and off-season programs, those ones were really big ones. I guess the Chargers are lucky that they're going to be able to overcome some of these injuries, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of big names going down early in training camp. I mean, Joey Bosa got hurt early, and that one seems to be lingering. He's still, when it came time for the starters to play big reps in week 3, he didn't play in the game. He didn't play at all this preseason. But Anthony Lynn, like they asked him leading up to that game, is Bosa going to play? And Lynn said, no, he won't play. But if this was the regular season, yeah, he'd be playing. Well, fast forward to today, and Lynn's pre-practice press conference today, they actually asked Anthony Lynn, is Joey good for this weekend? And Lynn actually said, no, he might not be playing this weekend, that this foot injury continues to linger. He was limited in practice yesterday, but then didn't even suit up to practice today. So that's a real concern. Obviously you want him out there. A lot of people have him as their defensive player of the year pick. You want your best guys out there. So that one has lingered. Casey Hayward got hurt and didn't really play in the preseason, but all signs point to him being healthy. He's practiced all this week, and he should be good to go. And I'm pretty sure he practiced all last week too. Trevor Williams, the other starting corner, so both starting corners were hurt. Trevor Williams got hurt in kind of a scary injury. There was a lot of concern that he'd be down for a really long time, but it wound up just being a low ankle sprain. And he has practiced full this whole week, and he looks good to go. And then Forrest Lamp, he got injured last year, but it progressed longer than the team thought, and he didn't get in to play at all or practice until the last week of the preseason. But apparently he feels good to go. So that's just a matter of time before he gets into the starting lineup. And then obviously we had Hunter Henry and Jason Verrett both go down for the whole season. And that's a real shame because, obviously you wish the best for Jason Verrett. They spent such a high pick on him, and now he's had, multiple seasons just wiped away with injury. So, I think his time in LA is probably done. And then Hunter Henry, they wound up putting him on the PUP list. And so he has a chance to come back, they say, if he, pulls off a Melvin Ingram type recovery from this ACL tear. But, for his longevity and for his safety, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play this season.
Yeah, I'm really upset that Jason Verrett is gone for the season. That would have been such a tremendous secondary for the Chargers, and just never going to really get to see whatever he had to offer for this team. So that's a shame. And of course, Hunter Henry, well, he's got a few more years on him. So we're just going to see, which brings us to the next thing on the rundown. How do you feel about Antonio Gates on this team? Give me your honest answer. I don't want to hear no PR. Just tell me how you really feel.
So, they had to make this move, mostly because they had Virgil. They went and signed Virgil Green in the offseason. He is mostly a blocker. He's not a pass catching tight end, but he's a fantastic blocking tight end. He's kind of the opposite of Antonio Gates. He does everything you ask him in the blocking game, and he does it well. And then Sean Culkin is a guy who I even liked last year. He can kind of do both. He's a decent blocker and a decent pass catcher. But behind those two, none of the tight ends they had, Braden Bowman, Ben Johnson, nobody stepped up and basically made it so that they didn't have to sign Antonio Gates. And so when it came time for roster cuts, they cut everyone except Sean Culkin and Virgil Green. And now they have two tight ends, and they needed another option. And Antonio Gates is right there. He's basically the only player that could have come in at the last second, literally at the last second, and been able to contribute. Obviously it's going to take him a couple weeks to get into game shape, but they're not going to be asking a lot of him. I expect this week he'll get less than 20 snaps. He'll be in there basically on third downs and in the red zone only. It was a necessity signing. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I also don't hate it. He's going to provide some value, even if he's on the field as a distraction. It's something they needed to do. So he's a good stopgap, but I would definitely say that on the free agent target and draft target list for next year, the Chargers are probably going to be looking at tight end.
Yeah. The only thing I have to say about Gates is everybody in the organization, everybody at BFTB, we all knew it was going to happen, right? We knew he was going to get signed. Why did they wait so long? What was the point of that? Right now, we don't even know, or even Coach Lynn doesn't even know if he's ready to go for Sunday. So that just kind of irks me that they waited to the last possible moment to sign him when it was inevitable. This doesn't make sense.
I think that was a combination of things. I think one, they wanted to give those rookies, like I mentioned, Braden Bowman and Ben Johnson and those guys, I think they wanted to give them every opportunity to basically go out there and, make the case that they belong on the roster. And I think the other thing, honestly, is Antonio Gates is old and didn't want to show up to practice. And so I think he probably, weeks 2 and 3 of the preseason probably wasn't really picking up his phone. And then when they called again in the final week and was like, hey, this needs to happen, he was like, all right, I'll show up next week.
I'm sure that's what it was. Oh, well, it's water under the bridge. And so now we look forward to this coming matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs and AFC West battle right off the top. It'll be exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. The Chargers have lost 8 straight games to the Chiefs. The streak has to end somewhere. And the Chargers are starting at home at Rocket Field at StubHub or something now. At StubHub Center. So it's going to be a really good game. The team seems really fired up about it. The Chiefs are kind of a question mark right now. Eric Berry hasn't practiced yet still with this foot injury. He's got a heel injury. You've got Patrick Mahomes at the helm now. It's not, safe game manager Alex Smith. Now you have a true gunslinger in Patrick Mahomes leading this team. And, that that could go either way. I mean, I think their whole season is going to come down to when Patrick Mahomes throws a key touchdown and when he throws key interceptions. And so we have to hope that he throws a key interception in this game to swing things into the Chargers' favor. But like I said, on paper, this Chargers team it looks pretty stacked, and I'm pretty excited for this game.
Yeah. So let's just quickly run through these last few items on the rundown. Chargers will win if Phillip Rivers doesn't turn the ball over and Patrick Mahomes does turn the ball over. Yeah. I'd say the same thing. Chargers will win if there you go, turnover battle. Chargers win the turnover battle, and Chargers will lose if
basically the opposite. No, that's the easy way out. The Chargers will lose if they don't manage the clock well, and if they can't contain Kareem Hunt.
I think the Chargers will lose if they keep this game close towards the end, because that raucous crowd gets really wild there. And although you would think that this Charger team is a little bit more veteran-led than the Chiefs are at home, and you don't want to let that one go down the wire. As we've seen the last 4 times Chargers have been KC, they've come out on the losing end. So Chargers will lose if they keep it close to the last 3 minutes and possibly losing. So what's the one matchup you're willing or excited to watch this week?
I gotta say, I think it's probably going to be Derwin James versus Travis Kelce. I think that's going to be a really fun battle to watch. I think that's who they'll put on Travis Kelce. The last couple of years, they've been putting rotating Jaleel Adai and Adrian Phillips on Kelce. And so that's going to be a big change for Kelce to have a huge body like Derwin James up on him, somebody who's aggressive, somebody who's willing to get into his face. And so I think that's going to be a ton of fun to watch.
So we're assuming that depth chart that was released earlier this week is a little bit taken lightly, right? You're assuming Derwin's going to be in there pretty much as a starter.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Derwin plays more. He's definitely going to play more snaps than Rayshon Jenkins this week.
I'm looking for Melvin Ingram and whoever's going to try to contain him, because he looked pretty fast this preseason. And, of course, if he's able to get into Patrick Mahomes' face, that's going to cause those turnovers that the Chargers definitely need. So, score prediction, Matthew. What you got?
So I think this week, I think the Chargers are going to start off on a really good foot this year. And I think they come out and they beat the Chiefs 31-17.
31-17. So that's a good spread there. I'll say 27-20. And that's a late score by the Chiefs. So pretty much where you're going to. I think they're going to control this game, and Chargers start 1-0. That'll do it. Here, Matthew, first edition of the Rundown. Be sure to check out the Charger podcast. What's it called? Give us some details about the podcast that's going to be arriving here at Bolts from the Blue.
Yeah, so we're going to be putting out 2 podcasts, both me and Michael Peterson. You guys know him on Twitter as @ZoneTracks. We are going to be putting out 2 podcasts. We're going to have a podcast that comes out every Saturday called It's Almost Game Day. And we're going to talk about basically run down all the Chargers news from the week. We're going to go over the final injury report for the week heading into the game. We're going to give you our opinions on who you should start or sit as far as Chargers players in fantasy. And then give a quick game preview, just real quick, down and dirty, really basic. And then we're going to finish each episode with a really early eval on a draft pick that we like for this upcoming year. And we're going to focus on positions that the Chargers are going to be looking for. So we're going to be looking at offensive linemen. We're going to be looking at quarterbacks. We're going to be looking at some cornerbacks and safeties. And we're going to be looking at tight ends mostly throughout the season.
That's pretty cool.
And then the second podcast we're going to have is on Wednesdays. We're going to be having a podcast called The Rest of the West, where we catch you guys up on all the news every week from all of our division opponents. So catching you guys up on everything that's been happening to the Raiders, the Chiefs, and the Broncos. Because I think that's kind of a space that is kind of lacking as far as Chargers podcasts is really like looking at the other teams, except like the only time we hear about them is, when we're playing them like this week. Yeah. So I think that'll be a fun podcast. And we're going to be we'll be linking those on Bolts from the Blue and our Twitters. And I'm probably going to make Twitter accounts for those podcasts.
Cool. All right. There you got it. Chargers. Chargers are going to be everywhere now. So you have a lot of outlets to get your Chargers fixed. So for Matthew Stanley, I'm Ruben Gonzalez. We'll see you next week on The Rundown right here on The Recharge. See you guys.